So katoa, welcome to our council meeting for the 29th of March. We welcome all who are joining us by live stream. We also welcome Councillor Greg Brown, who is joining us by Zoom today. And we just remind everyone to please have your mobile phones turned off or on silent. We will take a quick morning break at 11 a.m. Depending how we go. But to start off our meeting this morning, I'd like to invite Councillor Patterson to open with the karakia.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tūtaua mai I runga, tūtaua mai I raro, tūtaua mai I roto, tūtaua mai I waho, kia tau ai te Māoritū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. I summon from above, I summon from below, I summon from within, I summon the surrounding environment, the universal vitality and energy to infuse and enrich all present. Enriched, unified and blessed.
Thank you very much, Don. Are there any apologies for this morning? Councillor Wari will be joining us very shortly. There appear to be none. May I please have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Any declarations of interest this morning? There appear to be none. Any urgent items not on the agenda? Councillor Lee.
Thank you and good morning, Your Worship. 2 weeks ago and today I filed a notice of motion with respect to elected members being provided with hard copy of council documents upon request. The reason for that being that the documents that we have access to in our online system prevents us from actually printing out these documents ourselves. So I was surprised it didn't appear on the council agenda last week, and I don't see it on the agenda this week. Could I have an update on what's going on with that, please?
Through you, Your Worship. The Council and I met last Friday and talked about the challenge of staff providing hard copy documents and the history really behind it being a lot around the cost to council of actually having two alternative means of getting material to people. What we talked through, I thought, was a suitable compromise whereby if councillors wish to request a hard copy of a particular document from time to time, that was acceptable. And that is actually the system that we will be putting into place. Effectively, what that does is to actually remove the need for the notice of motion.
Are you comfortable with that as a solution?
What we've put into place is a system whereby, and we'll be communicating this to you, if you actually require hard copy material from time to time for particular documents, that's what we will provide. So the notice of motion, therefore, is actually not required because we've actually met that need.
So you can just ask for it. You can just ask for it and you will receive a hard copy. Councillor Maxwell, the meeting has started already. I hope you have read your agenda online.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing the comms in due course, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further urgent items? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Worship. Could I just ask Mr. Williams, would that also include confidential items in future? Sorry, just to continue from Councillor Lee's question. Thank you.
Look, I think it's a matter of taking an approach on a case-by-case basis, and we need to obviously talk through circulation of hard copy, if that is actually provided on a confidential basis, and how do we manage that? That's something that we can attend to if actually the need arises.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien, for that clarification. It is actually the confidential items that most at issue, I can print off a council agenda at home, which is published on the council website. What I can't have access to at home and print off are confidential items. So that's at the crux of the issue.
Thank you. Any other urgent items for this morning?
Yeah, I too would like to have hard copies, especially for the full council meeting and perhaps the 2 standing committee meetings. And also I was going to ask regarding the confidential ones. I don't mind if we're not going to receive those until we can get it through here or something, but just that I prefer writing a lot on actually hard copies. And the question was, are we still going to provide hard copies for the public that do come and are showing an interest in our meetings when they're held, especially the full council and the 2 standing committees?
If I could just clarify that. The discussion that I had with Councillor Lee was that from time to time there are large documents that are actually issued to councillors which are fairly difficult to actually sometimes look at within an electronic device. And so when those situations occur, we will actually talk about, and councillors may request, hard copies of those documents. That said, the method of distribution for our agendas in a general way continues to be through the electronic medium which we're using at the moment.
No, I meant for the public though. Are the public going to get, say, like this?
The agendas are accessible 1 week prior to a meeting online. There are cost-saving and efficiency measures on why we, like many organisations, prefer to go digital and save paper where possible. So we'll move on from this. It wasn't quite, and we're delving into details that we wouldn't normally in urgent items, so I wanted to make sure councillors are aware that at your request we can have a printed copy. So we will move on to any other urgent items if there are any. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was disappointed to see that Auckland Council cancelled a meeting by the Stop Co-Governance organisation in a council-owned venue. Now, of course, under the Bill of Rights Act, freedom of speech is protected and affirmed, and certainly applies to councils. What can there be an assurance provided that any Rotorua venues owned by the council would be made available to Stop Co-Governance so that the conversation on this topic can be advanced?
Sorry, so just to clarify with elected members, urgent items that are not on the agenda are supposed to be minor matters relating to the general business of a local authority. So I might just ask the Chief Executive to reply briefly to that to confirm whether we have had a request and whether that is confirmed or progressed, only because of the obviously very public nature of what's going on at the moment. However, just a reminder to elected members to please just focus urgent items on council business.
So to clarify, we have received a request and there is no intention to actually deny that request. The only question that we've asked one of the party who's making the booking is how will the event be managed to ensure safety to those attending and actually to ensure that the venue is also well managed and secure.
Thank you.
Any other urgent items before we proceed with our agenda today? There do appear to be none. So we'll start off with the confirmation of minutes. We're on page 6. This is for Our council meeting held on 22nd of February 2023. May I please have a mover and a seconder to confirm that they are true and correct record? We have that moved by Councillor Kaifong, seconded by Councillor Wang. Were there any corrections required? There appear to be none. That has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. That's carried. And we're into our staff reports. So page 11 of your agenda, we start off with financial performance. I ask a mover and a seconder for us to receive the report, financial performance for the 8 months ended on 28th of February 2023, be received. Moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Barker. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. And we hand over to DC Thomas Colley to overview the report and speak to a short presentation.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. I have the pleasure of presenting the financial update for the 8 months to the end of February 2023. Just remind you of the discussion we've been having over the last few months with regards to the pressure that the organisation does face. So on one side, we have been impacted with unbudgeted expenses with regards to a number of adverse weather events. We've also continued to experience high inflation and in particular CPI adjustments on some of our larger key contracts. And in addition to that, we have responded on behalf of the community around the emergency housing challenges and in particular the resource consenting of a number of facilities. Offsetting that, the organisation has responded and continues to respond with regards to reviewing its expenditure and deferring where appropriate. We have deferred recruitment of vacancies where possible as well, where it has no detrimental effect on the organisation's performance. And we've also increased some of our revenue targets to help balance and offset the position. So to date, income is nearly 19 million behind budget. Now, 20 million of that does relate to funding to support our capital projects. And the reason why that revenue hasn't been received is because those projects haven't progressed at the pace and therefore haven't achieved the milestones to receive that funding from the external providers. Underneath of that, revenues across some of our other streams such as consenting and rates have continued to track ahead of budget. Our operating expenses are tracking 2.7 million over budget, and that's the main area where the concentration of those challenges sit with regards to expenses supporting the resource consenting for emergency housing and also the repairs to infrastructure, trees as a response to storm damages from those winter events. Our capital expenditure is tracking 47 million behind budget to date, and again there's a number of reasons for that which we've talked about before, predominantly tied to a couple of key projects that are now underway or not. So one being the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, which was signed off just pre-Christmas and has started commencement work. The aquatic centre, which is now started as well and still on hold, subject to a future decision of council, is obviously the museum. And overall, our net debt is sitting at 311 million, slightly up on the start of the year, and that debt that has been drawn has been used to support the $54.4 million of capital spend to date. Just got to go back to the underlying operating performance or surplus deficit. So within the report that you have, when you strip out the portion that relates to the timing of capital subsidies, you also remove the portion that relates to development contributions. Underneath of it all is a $400,000 deficit, and so that's close to budget. And you'll recall last month we talked about that being $800,000. So what we have seen is an improvement over the last couple of months, and that is a response of obviously the actions that staff have taken with regards to deferring expenditure, reviewing expenditure, seeking revenue targets. So what we have seen is an improvement on that on the previous month. I'll just remind you that the shortfall in capital subsidies is okay. It is timed to the delivery of our capital programs, and so that is purely just a timing related issue rather than anything else. Our capital spend has progressed well. Renewals are well underway as well. As I said, a number of key projects have now commenced. Some are also coming to completion, and we do anticipate by year end not to spend the full amount, as a number of projects, due to their timing and deferment. Now, we did come to you last month with regards to highlighting the challenge that the organisation has faced. So pre-Christmas, we were forecasting a deficit of about $5.6 million, and that was due to all those challenges that we've described before. The organisation went away during the Christmas period, and that forecast deficit was reset to $2.9 million at the end of January. And at the last meeting, the council did ask us to go away and identify opportunities to further pull that position back on budget. So what we have done and what we have seen is actually a good improvement in that underlying position over the last couple of months. So it hasn't deteriorated further and has actually improved to be closer on to budget. So staff are confident that if we continue on this path without knowing obviously any uncertain events going forward, that we can either maintain that position or be close to budget as possible. And what the recommendation is to council is that we're also tracking behind in our renewal spend and our capital spend, and to use the savings of that to offset any cost pressures in our operating result, to deliver a result at the end of the year that means we'll be as close to budget as possible. The majority of our renewal capital works program will be completed, and the surplus funds of that program will be used to offset any deficit that we have in our operating result, which means from a very simplistic perspective that no borrowings will be used to fund the operations of council. And so that is the recommendation of that. So how does that work? And I'll just spend a little bit of time explaining this one. So on the left-hand side, we have an operating surplus deficit position, and that's where we're talking about the fact that we're $400,000 behind at the moment, and that was forecast to be $2.9 million by the end of the year. We are, as we said, working to minimise that, and we have seen a $400,000 improvement in that area over the last couple of months. Now that's funded by a mixture of rates and fees and charges. Next to it we have our capital renewal program. So that's again the renewal of our existing infrastructure by doing proactive maintenance. We are likely to underspend that at the end of the year, and predominantly in the stormwater program. And the reason for that is that we have been successful in securing government funding for a number of stormwater initiatives. And so therefore, as we deliver those programs, we're not having to utilise as much of that renewal budget as possible. The renewal funding is also funded predominantly from rates, and so therefore the savings in that area will be used to offset any deficit in the operating area. Then next to that is our loan funded activities, and so that is to support the remainder of our capital works program, and that is used for external borrowings, and that is to support capital expenditure where we talk about level of service improvements, so such as an upgrade to a wastewater treatment plant, an expansion of a wastewater network at Rotorua, the refurbishment of the aquatic centre, and so those are the types of activities that are loan funded. And then next to that is developer funded, and so that's growth funded capital works, whereby we may put in a new water supply at Tarawera, and so those are items that are undertaken to support growth in our district, and they're funded through predominantly developer contributions. And so what we are saying is that Those two work streams to the right of that screen, loan funded and developer funded, will continue, and onto the rate funded side, that any pressure in our cost base and operations will be offset by savings in our renewal program, predominantly the savings that are able to be achieved as we've successfully received government funding through either CIP or the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund. And so that is the recommendation to Council. And the combination of those two combined will ensure that we end the year without having to use borrowings to support our operations. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions this morning? Yes, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Chair. Thank you, gents, for the report. Just to help some people who may be watching and missed a couple of points there, under the heading back further under income, it said we were behind budget due to not reaching funding milestones. So that funding's not at risk because we didn't reach those milestones?
The funding is not at risk. We haven't achieved those milestones because the project hasn't either started or it is at an earlier stage than what we budgeted for. Yes.
Thank you for that. And supplementary question. The net debt noted at 311.9 million. So how far off are we from our debt ceiling?
We are, I think, approximately close to $150 million from memory, but I'd have to confirm that. We are well under our debt ceiling. So I can come back to you and confirm what that number is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any other questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the Chair, Thomas. I have a few questions for you. You say there's a lower than budgeted development and financial contribution revenue from developers. What do you put that down to?
I put that down to probably the general macroeconomic conditions of the country, where interest rates have risen. The cost of building seems to have peaked during that COVID period, and I think everyone is seeing the slowdown in the housing market, and I'd say that that's happening across the country.
Okay, is the development contribution policy working as expected, or is that the same issue that we're talking about there? Or
there's no issue itself with the policy. I'll just remind councillors that if we're not collecting development contributions because the growth is not happening for a particular reason, we're also therefore not having to invest into the infrastructure to support that growth. So on one hand, the revenue is down, but on the other hand, we're also not incurring the expenditure. So therefore, the two do offset.
Okay. Do Kāinga Ora pay development contributions?
Yes, my understanding is that Crown entities are not exempt from these.
Are they not developing at the present time?
So any development that they push through to our organisation will trigger development contributions. I think the ones that they are currently working on at the moment and you are seeing completed were into the system and processed before our development contribution policy came live. So any new ones will get picked up.
Thank you. Do Kāinga Ora pay rates for the properties they own?
Yes, they do, Councillor. Kāinga Ora is a Crown entity that has to act and behave like all other companies and incur the same costs. They're not exempt from any council charges, just like anyone else.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on the financial performance? There appears to be none. Thank you very much, Thomas. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder for the motions, and then can open up for any discussion if there is any. I'll read the motions: that staff will continue to identify options for cost savings in order to achieve approved budgets, that any residual operational deficit will be offset against underspends in capital renewals funded through depreciation, and that any residual operating deficit will not be funded through external borrowing. That's moved by Councillor Waru, seconded by Councillor Wang. I now invite a round of discussion if there is any. Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you. Excuse me. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Just want to say thank you to the staff for the work that they have done to actually bring back that deficit to where it is, and know that the staff will be undertaking all the work that they can possibly do to continue to identify cost savings. And I think it's good that we give assurance to the community that we will not be using borrowings for OPEX. So I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kaifong. Any further comments before we close off? There appear to be none. We have a mover and a seconder for that. I'll put that to the vote for the 3 remaining recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. We now move into the LGNZ conference. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report 2023 Local Government New Zealand Conference be received. Moved by Councillor Maxwell, seconded by Councillor Waru. All those in favour to receive it, say aye. Carried. So now I'd like to invite DC Una Hopkins to overview the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors and Your Worship. The Local Government LGNZ conference is held in July every year. Council have a policy whereby the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, the Chief Executive, 2 councillor appointments and 1 representative from Te Tātou represent the Rotorua District, the Rotorua Council down at that conference. So each year we come to the council with the suggested nominees in terms of the councillors to attend the conference. To get approval from the council in order for us to go ahead and make the necessary arrangements for your attendance at the conference. So today in front of you, you have Councillor Keriopa and Councillor Patterson, who have been put forward to join the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, the Chief Executive and a representative from Te Tātou at that conference. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Councillor Maxwell, followed by Councillor Barker and then Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, I'm definitely supportive of the recommendations here, but the questions that I have is, will any of the members be attending the Te Maruata meeting in Christchurch, which is normally a day prior to this conference, an important one?
Well, Councillor Keriopa, as our Māori Ward Councillor, if she so wishes, then would be happy to support her to attend that as well, but yet to confirm that with her. We thought we'll confirm that she is attending first. Yeah, thank you. There is also a young elected member, Te Maruata, which is the Māori representatives of elected members across the country, and then the young elected member, which is YEM, of which Councillor Fisher-Wang is the Zone 2 representative again, which is fantastic. So those are additional groups that meet at our GNZ conference, just for people's information. And Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just could you confirm the cost of the registration for the conference, please, Una, and also what travel and accommodation costs there will be per person, please? And there might be another supplementary to that.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. So the registration, if we get in on the early bird, is $1,540, so 1540 for each delegate. The accommodation, it is down, it's in Christchurch, so flights and accommodation are a little bit more pricier given it's down to the South Island, so accommodation for the 3 nights is estimated at about $780 and the flights at around about $473 return. So a total for each delegate would be 2793.
It says in our policy around conference attendance for elected members that there would be, if it's outside of Rotorua, that there should be some sort of business case to put forward to say why we should be attending. Is there any business case for this particular conference? Thank you.
This one, because it is an annual event and we are members of Local Government New Zealand, hence the policy around this one in particular in terms of the attendance at the actual conference. What we haven't got at this point in time, in which we usually like to bring forward to the council, is the theme of the particular conference. And in the past, what we've done is we've been able to link elected members who have a lead in an area or a lead in an area that is related to things that are on the agenda. We don't have that information at the time. So in this instance, we've taken the approach of discussions with our worship in terms of giving opportunities for newer councillors to attend that conference in the first place.
Thank you. And it is unusual that we don't know the theme of the conference yet. So there is a strategic purpose for our council being involved, and I look forward to our new councillors learning more about local government and enjoying the discussions that are to come. And also there is a report back from the councillors that do attend to the council meeting as well. So a formal report, verbal and both written, to confirm what was discussed, and then also if there are any actions moving forward for Rotorua based on not only the remits but also the theme that comes from the conference. So. And Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship. I notice Auckland Council recently cancelled their membership of Local Government New Zealand. What is the cost of our membership?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. The cost for Local Government New Zealand is based on size, mainly around the councils and that. For us, we pay a per annum of $61,000 a year, and that does give us membership to LGNZ, plus a number of work streams, events, user guides, training, and I'm happy to circulate this here rather than actually read it all out at the moment, but it does give a very good overlay of what the council receive for that membership.
Thank you. We did attend the LGNZ induction meeting here in Rotorua at Te Puia, and maybe it's a compliment to our staff and yourself, Your Worship, in terms of the rest of the induction program, but I found that particular session to be probably the least helpful of the whole induction period. On that note, I'd like to thank Councillors Patterson and Kariopa for taking one for the team and heading off down to Christchurch, and I'm pleased that's not me. I see that there is a seat there for one Te Tato Aotearoa board member. Given that we now have a Māori ward and Councillor Kariopa is on the Te Tato board, last I heard, I'm wondering why that's necessary at this time.
Councillor Kiriopa will be attending in her capacity as a councillor, and I'm very pleased that both her and Councillor Patterson will be attending, because it's not only taking one for the team, it's also bringing back the valuable information and of course advocating for the best interests of Rotorua at a time when we do have significant reforms across the country. So ensuring we have a local voice is very important. As part of ensuring we have a local voice, our Te Tato Aotearoa board, they also make a decision on who will be their best representative for this going forward. At this time we don't have confirmation of who that is, but it is part of our policy to have 2, and their policy to have 1 representative. And where possible, as example, when we've had the conference in Rotorua or closer, we do extend that invitation wider for councillors to be able to attend. Just unfortunately, being so far away, the cost is prohibitive, so we're sticking to the bare minimum of representation of representatives that we will need.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this item? Councillor Maxwell.
Hope I've got it wrong, but have we got a council meeting that week during the conference? Because we try and avoid that, otherwise we have members missing. Yeah, thank you.
From memory, I'm very sure we shifted that week's council meeting to the Tuesday to ensure that we can all attend everything. Yes. So there do appear to be no further questions on this item. We've had a mover and a seconder for it to be received. I now ask for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that Council determine that the following 2 councillors attend the 2023 LGNZ conference, Councillor Kiriopa and Councillor Patterson, and that Council note that the Te Tato Aotearoa Board will appoint their representative to attend the conference. That's moved by Councillor Maxwell, seconded by Councillor Waru. I now invite a round of discussion if there is any. Yes, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to give you an idea of the most recent LGNZ event that Deputy Mayor Kai Fong and I attended at Karapiro Convention Centre over there, there were some really interesting topics covered. The first one that came to mind, which Councillor Lee touched on earlier, was the discussion around council's facilities being utilised for public meetings which may be controversial, and how we have to approach that. It was really interesting the way it aligned with the Bill of Rights. It was delivered by Tompkins Wake, one of their top consultants over there in Hamilton, and he made some really interesting comments, so I learned a lot from that. And then the next one, which I think I would like to talk to perhaps DCA Thomas Collet and maybe Mr. Williams, is about our insurances with regards to the threats that climate change is bringing to us and what that does to our insurances. I had no idea how that whole thing worked, but there are opportunities for us to make major cost savings, perhaps too late for the annual plan, but for the LTP going forward, because some of the things that we're currently insuring may just not be worth insuring. So the way they pointed it out was really educational. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know Deputy Mayor Kai Fong certainly got something from it as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. And Rotorua Lakes Council is part of the Zone 2 region, which covers the central North Island and including the East Coast area. So a large area, but a great opportunity for us to network, to connect, and to find solutions together with the other councils for the many challenges that we face. We have Councillor Kai Fong, and then please let me know if anyone else wants to make comments, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the LGNZ conference, I think that as councillors, we have gone through a very rigorous induction process, and I think this is one opportunity for professional development, and it's one that if we did have the budget, I would like everyone to have had the opportunity to attend. Obviously, that's not possible given the situation that we're in, but in terms of the opportunity, the general range of topics that they present, the number of different speakers and the opportunity to actually network directly with other mayors, councillors and deputy mayors, community board, Muruwata members. The depth and breadth of the discussion is very relevant, very topical to the work that we are currently doing, and I think that there isn't a requirement, I think it is actually a requirement, that councillors that do attend give a very full report back so that other councillors are aware of what was actually discussed at the meeting, and that we can all share in the learnings from that conference, even though only a few are able to attend that. There are also remits, so there is an opportunity for things where councils have a specific area of focus that they may like some support from other councils to look at, so that is something that the Mayor and Deputy Mayor can advance for this region if there's something in there. And also I think it's an opportunity, if there are some areas that perhaps the CEO might identify where we could enter this council into the LGNZ Awards so that we actually get some recognition for some of the programs or the work that we are doing that is actually innovative and probably a bit different from some of the work that the other councils do. And it would be good for our council to get some of that kudos if we were able to win an award. So I would support the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Chair. Your Worship, I will be supporting the motion. I commend the selection of Councillor Kiriopa and Councillor Patterson, and of course yourself in attendance as your first meeting as our Mayor. So I wish the three of you and all of you all the very best, and I know you'll represent this council and our city well. I must say, Ovo, I'm concerned that we have 6 to 7 people going at a very tight time economically when we're facing some very difficult challenges. Given the location, I must be honest, I do question whether the amount of people going is required. However, as I say, it's a small matter, but I just think in the current climate, it wouldn't be what I would be doing. But I wish all of you very well, and I know you'll represent us well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One last comment from Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I would like to give credit where credit is due. Local government New Zealand provided us and drafted the standing orders that we adopted sight unseen with very little modification. I noticed that the same didn't apply to their draft template code of conduct, which Rotorua saw fit to completely redraft. So yeah, I think I acknowledge Councillor O'Brien's comments, and I'm just going to vote against this. I'm not really a supporter of local government New Zealand's work at the present time. Thank you.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Councillor Lee, for letting us know. It does appear to be... Oh, sorry, Councillor Brown. Nope. Sorry, okay. It does appear to be all the comments for today. We do have a mover and a seconder for the motion. I'd like to now put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Would you like that recorded? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Okay, that is carried, and we move to our next item on page 20 of our agenda. I ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report, Proposed Land Development and Road Realignment 61 Kawaha Point Road be received. That is moved by Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favour to receive the report say aye. Aye. Thank you. And we also welcome John Fenwick, who is here in our public galleria, and he of course is the representative from Waikatetu. So great to have you here as part of the discussions, although I know that you've been working on this for quite some time. So we'll hand over to JP and Stephanie to overview the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think in that introductions, you probably just touched on a key point here, which is this report represents the conclusion of 2 years' worth of discussions we've had with the Waikato Rugby Club. We've explored a number of options and discounted those as we've moved forward. So we've got to a point now where it's the simpler version of just going through an RFP process for our land, considering also the land gives us the opportunity to also realign and get a good road through that area, which links in with the back of Frank Street, and also the chance then to for the club to make its decisions about its number 2 field and how that might work with us. And probably most importantly too, it gives us a real life opportunity to start moving forward with our infrastructure acceleration fund to make sure we start addressing stormwater concerns in that wider vicinity. So a really important project for us to directly link that investment for infrastructure to housing development. So I'll just hand over to Steph to guide us through the report or key points.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. I think JP's actually covered the basis of the report, but I'll just quickly go through the proposal again. This map might be more readable in your reports. So really it includes a number of elements to this proposal. Firstly, the realignment of Frank Street extension. So this is unformed road. In its current layout, it would cause issues if the land adjacent, being 61 Kawaha Point Road, was to be developed, particularly creating a rat run and creating poor urban design outcomes. In developing the land at 61 Kawaha Point, we would seek to do this through a request for proposals process, a similar process to what we have run for other council surplus land in the past. A commitment to develop a sports field on Boyle Park should the club choose to develop their second field, and they obviously have their own processes around how they get to a conclusion on that. Boyle Park is a significant council reserve. Its design, however, is not ideal in terms of particularly the visibility into the site, makes it not very attractive to our community to use. So this would create increased open space outcomes, increased usability, and ensure that the club still and the wider community have access to really good quality sports facilities. And then finally, enabling the upgrade of the stormwater infrastructure within this area. We did secure funding through our IF application specifically for this development, as the conversation with the club have been ongoing for some time, so we were able to anticipate that. The detailed design of that is yet to be done and would need to be done following the decision of council and running in parallel with the other processes. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seems like the report was really well written. So we'll take a question from Councillor Waru.
Morena korua. Uchira te maangai o te karapu o te pito o te ao, tēnā koe. No, this seems like a sort of a no-brainer to me. And it's supported, well, that's what I want to ask, to make sure it is supported by the club. So if you could just confirm that with me, that's my only question.
Yes, it is supported by the club, and I think John's presence here today demonstrates that.
Thank you. Just making a point. Kia ora.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the Chair. Just a question on the analysis of the demand and supply of Council's existing sports field network. How long ago was that actually undertaken? How old is that data that you've used?
There was a supply and demand analysis of our sports field network undertaken 3 years ago, and that is currently being revisited, with it to be finalised, I understand, mid-year.
Right, so that's part of the PARS process?
It will inform PARS, but it is a standard process that the majority of councils undertake to, I guess, allocate codes to sports fields and understand what additional sports fields we might require in the future based on population growth.
Right, just a supplementary point. The information I got before I went down to the Sport New Zealand hui said that of all codes, rugby seemed to have a surplus of fields, whereas football and basketball and netball to a certain extent were really suffering. Is there any thought to incorporating some of those codes with this, potentially?
I mean, yes, we wouldn't rule it out. The intention with the field is that it would be available primarily for the use of Waikiri, but it would form part of our wider council sports field network, so it should be made available for other codes.
Thank you.
And of course, there still is the reserve in the playground that will be there as well. So we have Councillor Maxwell followed by Councillor Kaifong.
To the motion now?
Sorry, we're just on questions, but I'll note you down for comments as soon as we get there. Councillor Kaifong.
Thank you, Chair. Just two questions, or when and or where. Just in terms of that motion, so in terms of the requirement or the in principle development of the Waikiri number 2 field, and I'm conscious that John's sitting in the back there, but is there a requirement for a time limit for the club to undertake that development so that we get quick builds of houses on that area?
Whilst an integrated approach would probably benefit a developer who might look at purchasing both or partnering around both, they don't have to be joined up. So for us in the motion, it's very clear about saying, look, we'll take our pathway of making sure we've opened up the road and the housing opportunities. Obviously, we'll collect then financial contributions off that. So that gives us the funding to potentially invest in the field. But again, then we're allowing Waikiki to take their appropriate amount of time and decision making within the club to develop their field as they see fit. So they don't have to be connected at this stage, and then there's no particular time requirement to it. We can certainly get on with our piece to ensure we've got the road connection and the housing options in place.
And second question, just where is the other land that is currently being disposed of, which would be used to fund the sports field in recommendation 6? Sorry, motion.
That is 283 Clayton Road. So we are, the land has not, just for clarity, the land has not yet been disposed of. We are currently undertaking due diligence with the preferred developer.
Thank you.
Probably just adding to that, whilst we've just covered ourselves there with that resolution, between the financial contributions and the sale, there will be significant levels of funding that will come into council. So there is a sufficiency of funding to ensure we can undertake the sports field development, whether it is FCs or needs some topping up from the previous land sale.
That's very good to know. The question? Yeah, question from Councillor Wang and then Councillor Patterson, and then we can open up for comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you both for actually, thank you all of you for the report and for the work that's gone into this. My question was just around the stormwater. I note that there was the feasibility work is required, but it's expected to include a 8,000 cubic metre stormwater detention pond. Is that quite similar to the detention dams that have gone in another area?
I'm definitely no stormwater engineer, so I probably couldn't answer that, but the feasibility would, I guess, answer that question.
And I suppose once we progress with this, and we can ask Stavros to answer, but once we progress then, we'll then move on to the next steps of obviously feasibility and design, I presume. But we'll ask Stavros if he has any comments to add to that.
Thank you, Your Worship. In brief, 8,000 cubic meters is significantly smaller than detention dams in Plant Change 2 or in Linden Park, for example. A much smaller scale, representing the catchment area of these rugby clubs and the catchment area that's reflecting to. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just with that, I'd just like to signal that I'd like to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. We've got one more question from Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for the benefit of those watching, has the geotech work been done on the field to be potentially used for housing, to say that it's suitable?
Sorry, Councillor Patterson, just for clarity, are you referring to the club's land? I would have to defer to John to answer that question. I'm not sure.
But I do note that recommendation 5 is for us to approve this in principle and then subject to the club committing to the development of their existing number 2 field. So I suppose once the club has the green light from the council, then they will proceed to that next step, or they'll be able to do that. So, yeah. And hopefully it all works out and it's easy enough. So look, that's all the questions that we have for now. We have had it moved by Councillor Wang. May I please have a seconder, Councillor Maxwell, and I'll just read out the motions before we open up for comment, and then we'll go to Councillor Maxwell. And apologies, it is slightly long. That the council declares the land at 61 Kawaha Point Road being Lot 3 DPS 22550 to be surplus and approves the land for development and disposal using a request for proposals process. That the council delegates the Chief Executive Officer and the Chairperson of the Community and District Development Committee to dispose of the land to the successful party on conclusion of the request for proposals process. Recommendation 4, that the council notes that to achieve an optimal development outcome for the land at 61 Kawaha Point Road, that the unformed road road known as Frank Street Extension will be realigned using section 114 and 116 of the Public Works Act 1981 prior to the request for proposals process commencing. Recommendation number 5, that the Council approves in principle the development of a new sports field on Boyley Park for the use of the Waikato Rugby and Sports Club Inc., subject to the club committing to the development of their existing number 2 field. And recommendation 6, that the new sports field at Boyley Park will be funded using financial contributions and proceeds from the disposal of the other council land currently being progressed. We now open up for comments before we put that to the vote. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wholeheartedly support all the motions you've just read out here and happy to second the motion. But before some of my comments, I'd like to acknowledge our staff and John Fenwick for the obvious cooperation in 2 years of a dream turning into a reality. And I recall through the chair talking with John out at the AGM airport hui some 2 years ago when it was being thought through and then presentations were given to us. And at the time I thought, by Jeff, this happens, this is going to be really good for an area that has not had a lot of this kind of development happen, and I think this is going to be tremendous. So more than happy to second the motion and acknowledge all the fine work that have gone on up to now. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Councillor Kiriopa.
I might got tested before the meeting, but it seems to have gone flat in a short amount of time. Through the chair, I just my comment is I approached various people within Ngāti Whakaue ki te koetu to see whether or not how they felt about this, and of course management of Waikato Club obviously have worked hard on this, and I just want to state that the feedback was mixed, but all of the feedback related to housing development happening and the positives for Ngāti Whakaue housing. So those who supported it said, oh, it's great housing for our people. Those who didn't support it said, there's nothing in place to ensure that any housing that occurs there is housing for our people. And I just want to raise this in terms of the spatial planning. I raise this as often as I can, that iwi will go into these types of agreements with the best intentions and aspirations for our communities, to keep them committed, to have improved housing, but there's actually nothing within our district plan or anything in these systems and processes to ensure that it's actually housing that will be beneficial to our whānau and hapu from those communities, from within those communities. There's nothing to say that these houses won't go up and there'll be 1 or 2 bedroom apartment buildings for Aucklanders wanting to move to Rotorua. So I just raise it here to say these are conversations that within the spatial planning we need to be having with our hapu and iwi and the aspirations for our communities, and how can council support hapu and iwi to ensure that housing in these areas, which are still predominantly Ngāti Whakaue whānau, that housing that iwi have an input into somehow, I don't know how that looks, but they're better minds than me, but how do we support that housing in those areas to be to achieve the aspirations of our whānau and hapu, that it is our families somehow going into those homes, even though we know our families aren't in a position to buy homes. So, how do we work those things out? So I just raise it here. Ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi nui kia koe hoki, Councillor Kiriopa, and also quite timely your comments, because we will shortly be going into discussions around future development strategy for Rotorua as well, so an opportunity for us to look at how we can plan well for the future as the Rotorua Lakes Council too. So thank you for your comments. Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe te manukura, o tira tātou katoa tēnā kōrua. ara, kia koe hoki te rangatira e John. Tēnā koe kai taku whanaunga. Yes, I support just say it out straight, I support all the recommendations that have been laid out here. Just also somewhat of a, when it comes to Waikato, my family, a bit of a historians around this particular club. And I'll just sort of remind everyone that that whenua was set aside by particular families for the purposes of the sports club. And whatever brought hauora and good things to the people. Those families have, as far as I know, are all on board with the kaupapa, and are eager to see, how they can take advantage of the opportunity to be in homes, or even just with the Boal Park as well, training opportunities and things like that. So. Councillor Maxwell, Uncle Trev, is quite right. It hasn't been really a lot of work done around that area for a while. So I'm glad to see that there's some development supported by the club, and not just management whānau. So I just want to put that forward, and also I support the kōrero around the stormwater. As you're well aware, many years ago when that happened, it was raised with the council that it's something that it wasn't quite right, and I'm glad that we're moving in a direction to rectify that as a council. So I think it's a win-win for all, and I think it's a great opportunity to support that active kaupapa that we're always talking about. So I runga I tērā kai te tautoko katoa i te kaupapa kia kaha Waikato, iro.
Iro. Kia ora, Councillor Waru. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, tautoko my fellow councillors' comments. I'd have to say 10 out of 10, team. To me, this is an example of how things should be done. This is a partnership that's obviously been well thought out. Well, everybody's had plenty of time to work together to come up with this result. It's an excellent example of how we can do things going forward, utilising council land and reserves, but without losing any green space in the process. It's very cleverly done, well done. And we know that there are other areas in Rotorua that are not having such comfortable transitions, and perhaps they should have looked at this process instead of the way they're handling things. But anyway, totally support this.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher-Wang.
Thank you.
Some might say co-governance, eh? Oh, sorry.
I just want to echo some of the comments around the table and just thank all the work that you have all put in. Note that it's still early days, but there looks like there's going to be a massive potential there, not only for housing, but also for the improvement of the green spaces there as well, and obviously for the club and for your facilities there. And also note the in the report the importance of the good urban good urban development and planning as well. So really want to thank you guys for all the work that you have put in, and it is very great to see the IAF being put into action and seeing the improvements to the stormwater network through that fund, and how a example like this I think is a great example of good partnership, working together, and what we can actually achieve from that. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. Well, that concludes our comments and discussion on this. I just want to echo all of the comments from councillors. It is fantastic to be supporting the development aspirations of Waikato Rugby and Sports Club, and also an opportunity to support them in renewing facilities as well. We've seen a small part of that map, but this area also is surrounded by a number of different schools, Te Koro Te Koutu, Kawaha Point, Sauan Primary, and also a number of early childhood education centres. So I also look forward to the day where the children and the families around there can also go and enjoy a brand new green space, a brand new field, and hopefully very soon some upgraded Waikato sports facilities too. So we do have a mover and a seconder. I've read out the recommendations. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And a special acknowledgement to John Fenwick as well. We hope that you enjoy going back and informing the team that they've got the green light from the council, and we look forward to seeing how you progress with this development. Kia ora, thank you. So we now move to our next item for discussion today. We are on page 28 of our agenda. May I ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report, Local Government Statement 2022-25. Moved by Councillor Waru, seconded by Councillor Lee. All those in favour to receive the report, say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I'd like to invite DCE Una Hopkins to overview the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, councillors, before you today is the Local Governance Statement for 2022-25. It is a requirement of the Local Government Act that within 6 months the new council prepares and then publishes a local governance statement. And Section 40 of the Local Government Act does prescribe what is meant to be contained in that document. In simple terms, I akin it to a document that actually brings together the decisions that you've made following your induction program. So it brings together all into one place the way that you have set yourselves up in terms of how you will operate and make decisions going forward, and sets out the way in which you intend to work with one another and the community. I'm happy to take any questions on that. Just to note that we are in that stage of our requirement of 6 months, so we look forward to you endorsing that today so that it can be fully published. Thank you.
Thank you, Una. Any questions? Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question around the statements about the annual report. It says that we will have it adopted by the 31st of October each year and then published within no later than 4 months. And I know that we haven't actually achieved that. Is that correct?
So yes, so we've had an unprecedented time with the last annual report. Due to Audit New Zealand being very much under pressure following COVID and the likes, a number of audits across the country have not been able to be completed in a timely fashion. We are just about at the very end of the completion of the audit process, and it shall be coming to Council on the next Council agenda for adoption. So it will feel really weird for you because it's an annual report that we do require adoption from yourselves, but at the same time you're also going out with your annual plan. So this has never happened before. Completely out of our hands, and as a sign of the time, I guess, thanks to COVID and everybody getting back up to speed following that.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question. It mentions in here the Code of Conduct. We, I understand, are going to revisit that. If we do that and come up with our new one, Plan B, is that going to have any relation to this?
Through you, Your Worship. So yes, what you currently have is a Code of Conduct. The publishable date of that is 2019. You need to continue operating under that code until such time as that you are prepared to adopt a new one. So that means as it currently stands, the values and behaviours set out in that code are the values and behaviours that you are working against. However, that is different to the values and behaviours that you yourselves agreed upon in your induction program. So a new code does need to be adopted at some stage, but until such point as you wish to review that again and go back and have a look at that. You'll be working under the 2019. When you adopt a new code of conduct, we will need to update the local governance statement and republish that so that there is reference to your latest code of conduct.
Right, thank you. And the same would apply for if we decide to update the submissions policy, anything along those lines that has to then result in a change in this. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's a few things in here that, hey, look, overall this is a really helpful document. I wish I'd been introduced to it earlier and discovered that there was a earlier incarnation of this. Provides a wonderful roadmap of the council, which would be, it's very useful for new councillors to sort of understand this, the breadth and length and width of this organisation. I do have a few questions concerning some items that I don't think we've covered in the induction process or to date. It says here, remuneration policy, a total rewards policy was approved in 2022. What does this mean?
I can go back and follow up, but from memory I think that actually refers to the staffing remuneration policy, not elected members. I'll have to follow that one up for you, Councillor Lee.
Equity policy statement, I don't believe we covered that at any stage up until now. Have we covered the equity policy statement before this?
But bear in mind, Councillor, and I'll let Una provide any comments if she has any, that this provides information to the public on the processes that Council uses to engage with its residents. So part of the items that are included in this, as you would have seen, are things that we have covered off, including, of course, the electoral system, representation arrangements, and our governance structures, whether that's remuneration for us. So it's all, there are some items in here that would be business as usual and considered operational aspects of council, but where we have made any changes to the governance side, those have been updated and will continue to be updated as we progress.
Thank you.
There appear to be no further questions. Yes, Councillor Waru?
Signalling I'm prepared to move the motion.
Okay, we've got a mover. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kai Fong. I'll just read it, that the Council resolves to approve for public release the Rotorua Lakes Council Local Governance Statement 2022-25 as circulated in the separate document that is attached and also found online. I open for any comments if there are any before I put this to the vote. There do appear to be none, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We now will be moving into our public excluded session. What I'll recommend is we take the resolution to go into public excluded, and then we'll take our short morning tea break then. So I'd like to advise that there are two items for consideration in public excluded today: the confidential minutes from the previous council meeting held 22nd of February, and also the Infracore Limited strategic direction. Reasons for going into public excluded is due to maintaining legal professional privilege, to enable commercial activities without prejudice or disadvantage, and also to protect people from improper pressure or harassment. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder for the motion that Council move into public excluded session. Moved by Councillor Kai Fong, seconded by Councillor Waru. I put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We'll now take a short 15-minute break. If we could please return at 11 a.m.